Hello and welcome. This is a battle report for the Fallout Wasteland Warfare tabletop game. Today's game is using the A Safe Haven scenario from the Astoundingly Awesome Tales expansion. This is the last of the Survivor faction scenarios from that book, and I've been playing them out like a mini campaign, with Sturges taking the lead each time. He's escaped the vault, met up with another survivor, Piper, is being chased by the gunners, and is now looking to put his boots up in a settlement. Today's map is based around the exterior of said settlement. The north edge of the map represents the walls surrounding it, and the rest of the map is just wasteland detritus. The survivors' forces consist of two groups, Sturges and Piper as the recruits, and the settlement's defense force, a Protectron fire brigadier, a settler with a combat rifle, and an eyebot. Piper has her standard 10mm pistol and a baseball bat in case she gets stuck in melee. Sturges is geared to the gills, though. He has his usual .44 revolver and pipe wrench. The power armor frame from last scenario has been upgraded to a full set of T-45 power armor, and due to scenario rules, he is also heroic. I resolved his modder ability by creating a deck of all the potential mods he could equip, and drawing the top three. He ended up getting a targeting HUD for his power armor, which gives an extra yellow die for rifles or pistols. Combined with the .44, he's going to be rolling 3 of those per shot, which is nasty. He's also got an armor-piercing receiver for the .44, so any blank face on an effect die can count as an armor break. With the power armor, I had expected him to be a melee powerhouse, but with these mod draws, his shooting is also going to be pretty lethal. Coming after Sturges and Piper, we have a full squad of gunners. Their commander is also sporting T-45 power armor and carrying a Ripper and a plasma rifle. There's a sergeant with a baton and a combat rifle, and a single private with an assault rifle and a baton. Rounding out the crew is a pair of conscripts with 10mm pistols. Sturges and Piper have to set up in the middle of the board. Their goal is to have one of them on the other side of the settlement wall at the end of turn 6. The gunners just need to prevent that from happening. The settlement's defense force was not expecting company, so they're not going to show up until the end of round 2. There's also a special rule for the gunners that any non-unique model which is defeated has a 50% chance of respawning at the end of the round. Considering that even their commander isn't unique, this could be a big factor. Piper was set up on top of a searchable, so starts off trying to grab some extra gear before getting swarmed by gunners. She pulls a danger card, which ends up being a creature, which ends up with her failing an endurance check and getting poisoned. Not ideal, since we have literally no way to cure poison. She does get an army helmet for her trouble, and 2 extra physical armor is not bad to have. I run the math, and determine that the poison means that she literally can't take any more damage if she's going to survive to the end for the victory condition, so this is going to be interesting. Since that whole mess wasn't actually an action, she uses her turn to get into cover and drop a shot into the private. It's a big 4 damage hit, and even with 1 getting blocked by armor, 3 goes through. That's a solid start, at least. With the move up, the private is also close enough to be affected by Piper's distracting ability, so she lays that debuff on them. For the gunner's first activation, the private starts, and then uses the order's ability to also activate the lower rank conscript. The private decides to stand and shoot twice at Piper. The first shot would have been a hit, but between the cover and the distracting ability, it gets pushed into a miss. The second shot is a miss on its own merit. The conscript moves up to get clear of the cover, but then also misses widely. Sturges activates and gets 1 quick action for being heroic. He uses the quick action to do a short move, which puts him just in range with the .44 revolver. The first shot is a clean miss. The second shot hits for 3 damage, breaking the conscript's only point of armor. The gunner sergeant activates next, who also uses orders to bring the other conscript along. They both simply move up in order to get better positioning for the next turn. The gunner commander activates next, and rolls on the AI matrix that he wants to get into melee, so it's just 2 movements for him this turn. Turn 1 of 6 down, and the survivors haven't taken any damage besides Piper's poison. However, the gunners are now getting organized and are ready to bring some pain. Turn 2 starts with the unbearable heat event, so each side needs to have 1 model to be affected. They'll lose out on 1 action this turn. On the gunner side, 1 of the conscripts takes the hit. They have enough higher-ranking folks to take care of business, so this shouldn't hurt much. With only 2 models to act, this event really hurts the survivors much worse. I opt to have Piper make the sacrifice, since Sturges is more effective in combat than she is. With her single action, Piper drills a shot into the wounded conscript and drops him. Unable to get a shot off, the other heat-exhausted conscript moves up into cover. Sturges activates and gets a single action point from Vats. He takes his first shot at the commander and gets 2 crit points for it. 2 damage gets through. The second shot also hits with a bonus crit point. 2 more damage cracks the commander's power armor. With the crit meter fully charged, Sturges uses his quick action to unleash a crit shot on the commander. All of the remaining armor gets blasted through and 3 damage goes straight onto the commander. He's looking pretty battered after a single round of shooting. The sergeant moves up and takes a shot at Sturges, but it crit fails. Already debuffed by the distraction, the private moves up to get Piper's cover out of the way. She takes a shot and it hits. However, with the army helmet, Piper has 4 physical armor, so she blocks all the damage. The commander activates and gets 2 action points to use. His first shot is a hit. 1 damage gets blocked by the strong armor of the power armor, and another gets absorbed by Sturges' strong armor token for being a unique survivor model. 1 damage still gets through, though. The second shot gets through and also gets 2 damage in. This cracks Sturges' power armor. T-45 doesn't hang around nearly as long as the tougher ones, that's for sure. Into the quick action attacks now, and the first one is a wide miss. As is the second. Still though, getting to crack Sturges' power armor was pretty good for the gunners. As turn 2 ends, the settlement's defense force joins the fight. On one side of the bus, we have the Protectron Fire Brigadier. On top of the bus, the settlers set up in a nice little sniper's nest, and the Eyebot floats in from the flank. From the rules of this scenario, every defeated gunner model has a chance of coming back. However, this conscript is not lucky and is down for good. Wrapping up turn 2, the gunners have lost 1 conscript and the commander has taken a bucket-load of damage. Piper's damage countdown is still ticking due to the poison, and Sturges' power armor isn't going to be as effective as it was, so the reinforcements are very welcome. The event for turn 3 is a neutral party being added to the battlefield. Since he happened to be nearby, the Nuka Slugger from my custom campaign made a fitting representation for the Wandering Stranger model.
I don't know what those jabronis over there are up to, but I'm staying out of it.
The event for turn 4 had the icon that indicates that it should be revealed, but not put into effect early, so good to know that long-range shots in turn 4 will be affected. With the loss of the conscript and the arrival of survivor reinforcements, the advantage swings around, so the gunners get to go first. The private activates and starts throwing shots in Piper's direction. The first one is a hit plus action point, and rolls a respectable 3 damage. However, that extra armor from the army helmet helps her block it all. The next shot would have been a decent 3 damage, 1 armor break hit, but the distracting penalty makes it a miss. It's probably safe to assume that after every miss or armor blocked hit, that Piper's letting loose with another fresh barrage of insults. Instead of using the action point to prepare, the private opts to do a quick action move to get into cover of her own, since she's already fairly low on HP. Sturges activates, but gets no action points this turn. His first shot is a hit, but 1 of the 2 damage gets blocked by the commander's armor. His second shot is a straight miss, not as effective as last round, unfortunately. The gunner commander activates next, and brings along the sergeant with the orders ability. Fortunately for us, he doesn't get any bonus actions this turn either. He charges in, and gets a solid 3 damage swipe into Sturges with the Ripper. None of it gets blocked by armor, so that's a significant chunk of his health gone. I'm not sure if I'm playing this right, but I had the sergeant use the orders ability as well to ready up the conscript. Instead of risking hitting the commander with a ranged attack, the sergeant charges in with her baton. Despite the pile of dice, no extra damage gets rolled. 2 more damage go through after a bad armor roll, which isn't great, but it could have been way worse. With 5 damage and only 7 total HP, Sturges is looking a bit worse for wear. The conscript apparently has no qualms about shooting into a melee, possibly because they're more likely to be effective that way. The first shot hits, and also hits Sturges. Fortunately, he gets a perfect armor block to stop all of the 3 damage hit. The next shot is also a hit, and also hits Sturges, and also rolls for 3 damage, and also gets blocked with a perfect armor roll. Whew! Since the sergeant has the conscript in their aura, they have the ability to shoot as a quick attack, so the conscript does just that. This time, however, it's a hard miss. The settler perched up on the bus decides to go for the biggest target, the commander. She drills one in and knocks him out of commission. Since the sergeant is still at full health, she decides not to take the risk of maybe hitting Sturges, so she takes a shot at the conscript, and it's a critical fail. With the gunners out of activations, the survivors round out the turn. The Protectron Fire Brigadier moves up and hoses down the conscript with their handy cryojet for 2 damage. The Eyebot moves up and takes a long bomb shot at the private, but it goes wide with a crit fail. Piper takes a shot and drops the private with a big 4 damage hit. With her second action, she scoots around and uncovers a searchable requiring a search test. As the round closes out, we roll to see if any of the gunners come back. Fortunately, neither do. Turn 3 ends, and the gunners are getting a little bit light on manpower. Piper is looking greener and greener due to that poison, though, and Sturges is also pretty battered, so it's still very much up in the air how things are going to go. When turn 4 begins, the sun drops a bit, and now long-range shots are a bit trickier. The gunner sergeant activates and uses orders again to bring along the conscript. They're going to get this done now or fall. First swat with the sergeant's baton would have been a solid 4 damage hit, but it crit fails. Not an auspicious start. The second swing gets the exact same result. You'd almost feel bad for them if they weren't completely amoral guns for hire. The conscript gets their shot and continues shooting into the melee, rather than joining into a brawl with someone in power armor. Even with the bonus for shooting into combat, the first shot goes wide. The second shot connects, and this is where it gets interesting. Sturges only has 2 HP left, and the conscript has rolled 3 damage and 1 armor pierce. With the cracked T-45 armor, he has 2 armor left after the pierce. So depending on how the next few rolls go, this could be lights out for Sturges. The first thing I try is a luck roll. Since Sturges is heroic, he can use luck, and one of the things you can use luck for is to make a hitting shot miss. I try that, but it fails. Alright, well, that's the easy fix out of the way. So the armor die rolls, and it only saves 1 of the 3 damage. That's still enough to knock Sturges out, so the final Hail Mary attempt to stay alive is another luck flip to mitigate damage. This time, it succeeds, so Sturges only takes 1 damage and holds on for dear life. Now it's in Sturges' hands. He doesn't get any action points from VATS, so just swings away with his wrench. The first hit connects solidly, and also grants an action point, so that's nice. It rolls 2 straight damage, and none gets blocked by armor, so 1/3 of the sergeant's HP is down. The second swing is an unfortunate crit fail. The quick action attack is fortunately also a hit, but just barely. Normally, Sturges has skill 6 for melee, which would need a 4 or lower in order to connect for a quick attack. The power armor, even damaged, gives him +2 damage to strength though, hence the extra black die as well, which negates that quick action penalty. This armor roll also fails, so the sergeant loses the second third of her health, but is still standing after Sturges round, which isn't great for him. Despite the sun glare event, the settler needs to get these long-range shots in. Instead of risking hitting Sturges, she lines up on the conscript. The first shot is a good hit, gaining an action point and breaking the armor, so 2 damage gets through. Just 1 HP left on that conscript. Needing a 4 or under for this last shot, the settler nails it and clears out that conscript. Piper activates, and the damage countdown ticks down another tick. Since the survivor's win condition is to have one of the 2 original models inside the settlement walls, Piper decides to book it and at least lock that up as long as she's standing. The Protectron Fire Brigadier charges into the melee to help Sturges out. The Eyebot uncovers the searchable and finds a suit, which is not really helpful right now. A healing item for Sturges or Piper would have been a much more useful find. Turn 4 comes to a close, and things are on the razor's edge. There's only 1 gunner left on the field, but Sturges has 1 HP left, and Piper's getting slowly poisoned out of the game. To make matters worse for the survivors, the conscript they just KO'd is coming back as per the scenario rules. They might be burying somebody in that suit before this is over. Normally, I would randomize where they come back, but I decided in this case that I would make the choice that any intelligent human player would make. So, to my own detriment, I put the conscript in the prime position to chase after Piper. She'll survive to turn 6 and cinch the survivor win, as long as she doesn't take even 1 point of damage from another source. Turn 5 heats up with some Heat Haze. This is one of the hardest event cards for me to remember, so hopefully I don't flub it too much this game. The Gunner Sergeant gets picked to go first, and her AI rolls to run away. It's a 1 in 6 chance when she's hurt, but this doesn't make the most sense. I try to run these AI games with minimal intervention, so I considered ignoring this result and having her swat twice with the baton. In the end, I didn't though, justifying the decision that maybe she'd want to pull out and then fire back at Sturges with her rifle, which she's significantly better with. So by pulling away from combat, she gets some parting attacks from the survivors' forces. The Fire Brigadier swats away with an unarmed attack, and knocks her out. Well, that was about the least likely outcome from that scenario, but there you go. Piper activates next, and the poison countdown ticks another track down. Barely in line of sight and range, but Piper's able to use her distracting ability to drop a -2 token on the newly arrived conscript. She also attempts a shot with her 10mm, but the poison is clearly affecting her aim. She crit fails. For her second action, she ducks behind another piece of cover, in order to force the conscript to spend both actions this turn moving instead of shooting at her. No way to prevent the barrage next turn, though, unless we can knock him out. Sturges activates and gets 1 action point for being heroic. He spends 1 normal action moving up, but is just shy of the blue range needed for his .44 revolver. So he has to spend the action point for a quick action move to get in range. His shot does hit, and breaks all of the conscript's armor, so 2 damage gets in, but it's a big loss not being able to get another shot in. The Protectron Fire Brigadier has no way to get into range and line of sight for a shot this turn, so it has to spend its entire activation trundling up next to Sturges. The Eyebot wheels around and starts zapping away with its laser. The first shot is a crit fail. The second shot is a critical hit. Clearly, it just needed to recalibrate its targeting sensors. 2 damage on the attack, and they both go through. The conscript is hanging on with just 1 HP left. The Settler is the last to go, and she has to move from her sniper's nest because the bus gets in the way of her line of sight to the conscript. So she only gets 1 shot to seal the deal, and she crit fails. Oh no, he's going to get another chance at Piper next turn. Turn 5 ends, and things are coming down to the wire. The Gunner's forces are severely depleted. However, both Sturges and Piper are hanging on by threads, and one of them needs to be conscious and behind the settlement walls in order to secure the win. A bit more zoomed in on the northeast corner of the map, where all the action is coalesced into. The survivors have 5 models on the board and the Gunners 1, but Sturges isn't in scoring position, and Piper is going to take 1 round of shooting before anyone else gets a chance at knocking out that conscript. To make matters worse, the Gunner Sergeant is coming back, as per the scenario rules. She spawns back in at the same spot as the conscript last turn. It makes sense that reinforcements are arriving from the same vector. The Wasteland event for turn 6 is an awakening turret, which could have hilariously upended everything, except for the fact that it spawned way on the south end of the map, where it won't even get to see triggers from any of the action going on to the north. The moment of truth arrives, and the conscript activates. He's got 2 actions to try and drop Piper. His first shot is a crit fail. So far, so good. But, oh no. The second shot is a critical success. Piper only rolls a 1 on the armor die, so 1 damage is blocked, and 1 gets through. This means that once she activates, she'll get 1 more from the poison, and succumb to it. Ouch. Sturges activates next, and gets no additional actions from VATS this turn. Thanks. With Piper going to go down, Sturges has to get across the settlement line. Having that sergeant in the mix means that if he's not careful, he could also get knocked out before the end of the turn. So he goes for the gusto and charges the conscript. The attack's a total whiff, but that's not the important thing. The charge gave him some extra movement distance, and attacking means that he can still use a shift move to get safely across the line and into the settlement territory. So as long as the sergeant doesn't knock him out, we're in the clear. It all comes down to this. The sergeant activates. She has to spend 1 action point in order to move up to get into line of sight on the melee. I start to get grateful that Sturges didn't knock out the conscript, because now there's a chance that if she hits the melee, she'll hit her own guy instead of Sturges. She takes the shot, and misses by a country mile. Sturges is safe. Piper activates, and promptly passes out. The Protectron Fire Brigadier takes some shots with his hand cryojet on the sergeant. Shot 1 is a wide miss. Shot 2 is a wider miss. Protectrons are not usually known for their accuracy, which is why the KO on the previous Sergeant was such a surprise. The Eyebot takes a turn, and zaps 2 points of damage onto the Sergeant. The second shot is also good, but with no extra damage rolled, only the base 1 energy damage goes through. As the final activation of the game, the Settler gets a pair of long-range shots with their combat rifle. The first one is good, and gets 2 more damage through. The Sergeant is now 1 HP away from a KO. And the second one lands too. With that, the Sergeant is down, again, and turn 6 comes to a close. By a razor's edge, the survivors pull out a win for this scenario. This was such a nail-biter. There are a few key results which, if reversed, could have easily tipped the scales. If the Gunner Commander had respawned, that would have really put us on the back foot. That's the fun with this sort of scenario, though. Random things can happen, and if they do, you need to roll with the punches. The whole pace of the scenario would have been different too, if Piper hadn't gotten poisoned on turn 1, or if she hadn't gotten that army helmet from the subsequent item draw. In my opinion, this is one area where Wasteland Warfare really shines. So, this is the end of the scenario, but also the end of the Survivor scenario pack from the Astoundingly Awesome Tales. I've really enjoyed playing this set, and will probably keep playing some more of those scenarios going forward. But there are other sets that have come out in the meantime, so the rest might have to be more of a mix-in down the road. In any case, I hope you found the battle reports fun to watch. And remember, stay safe out there in the Wasteland.